This is the OTB Television Network, a service of Capital District Off-Track Betting.
Good morning and welcome to Racing Across America for this Wednesday morning. I'm Seth Merrill. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday, this cold Wednesday, and hopefully the snow will hold off. They're looking at a little snow into Thursday, into Friday. We'll have to see how that shakes out as far as racing across the country over the next couple of days. Particularly, I'm interested in Oaklawn, which is scheduled to come back and start racing tomorrow. They've got a nice weekend plan with their 3-year-old race kicking back in their 3-year-old series on Monday, President's Day. But it's supposed to be cold down there again, so we'll be interested to see how things do shake out down at Oaklawn. But otherwise, it looks like, today things are perfectly good as we're a limited number of tracks. But a little earlier on the Handicappers Report, Jeff Carl and I looked at Tampa and Gulfstream Park. Certainly they're going to be scheduled to run today, so there'll be action to enjoy on this Wednesday. Coming up a little later on the program, Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com and Countdown to the Crown. As always, bring Jeremy on to talk a little bit about the 3-year-olds. There was some 3-year-old action last weekend, obviously in the Bob Lewis. We'll get some of his thoughts there. But then some allowance races also that were kind of interesting. For not necessarily, I don't know, a couple of them, the Derby maybe not, but 3-year-old sprinters, just some 3-year-olds that may be interesting to keep our eyes on. A little after bottom of the hour, we will be joined by Brian Nadeau from horseplayernow.com. We're going to touch on some of the action at Tampa for this afternoon with him, and then a little later on we'll also get some of his thoughts on some of the stakes action from this past weekend, as it was a really nice stakes weekend across the country. They have announced the nominations for the 2014 Dubai World Cup. Mucho Macho Man kind of heads things up. Also among the nominees, Magician, the Breeders' Cup Turf winner, Japan Dirt winner, Belshazzar is in there, a Ruler of the World, Epsom Derby winner, Hong Kong Cup winner, Akid Mofid. These are obviously just the nominations. They're not all guaranteed to show up. There are 341 nominations, but the nomination list, pretty impressive. Ken Ramsey has Admiral Kitten and Big Blue Kitten in the mix. So we'll see. Again, this is just the nomination list. It came out yesterday, and the nominations for, in fact, and Gentle Donna is also among the nominees on the card. She's nominated to Dubai Shima Classic. And again, they came out yesterday. You can pull up the lists, the complete list of the nominees on the Dubai Racing Club website. So, again, nominees, pretty impressive. But as noted, that's not necessarily who will wind up in the starting gate. But so far, so good for the 2014 Dubai World Cup. Speaking of Dubai, I will mention tomorrow in Dubai, the UAE 2000 Guineas, which is typically a prep for the UAE Derby, which is the 3-year-old race on the undercard of the Dubai World Cup. And typically, not always, but typically you get some runners, some 3-year-old runners in the UAE 2000 Guineas and the UAE Derby who at least have some kind of an American connection. Have come over here for a race or spent the 2-year-old season here and then went over to Dubai, something. And the UAE 2000 Guineas, at least, it's hard to say what the Derby will wind up like in a better part of a month or so. But the 2000 Guineas for tomorrow, which has a post time, our time of 10:20 a.m. But there aren't any American-based runners there, or no real American-based connections. Kind of interesting, though, Godolphin has a couple of runners coming in from Australia. That's kind of interesting. Paxamadia had most recently raced at Caulfield and Flemington, a couple of wins at those racetracks. Now makes that move from Australia to Dubai for Godolphin, and a similar situation for Long John. Comes in for Godolphin from Australia, which again just seems a little bit unusual. Also in the race is a Mike DeCock runner. You always have to pay attention to him. And again, if you don't follow international racing, DeCock on the international scene, he's based in South Africa, but shows up in Dubai every season, and he's always loaded. You know, analogous to a Todd Pletcher over here. He's a guy you always have to pay attention to. That Full Combat, who's entered tomorrow in the UAE 2000 Guineas, looks up against it a little bit, but only 6-1 on the morning line, and I think that's because it's a Mike DeCock horse, and I think just the name is going to attract a lot of attention. But a scheduled field of 11 tomorrow in the UAE 2000 Guineas. Again, post time scheduled for Thursday morning, 10:20 a.m. our time. So keep that in mind. Dubai tomorrow, the 3-year-olds prepping for the UAE Derby. Éblouissant will be back in action tomorrow. Speaking of the Thursday action, Éblouissant is the full sibling to Zenyatta, half sibling actually. It's a half sister to Zenyatta. There has been, certainly being a relative of Zenyatta, there has been high expectations for Éblouissant, which he has not really been able to live up to so far. Had an abbreviated campaign last year, and tomorrow comes back out at Santa Anita, making her first start since she was last seen in July. As I say, this is a horse that, because of the bloodlines, there were some high expectations, probably will never be able to live up to those. But still, I think it's a horse that we all have some interest in and follow when she makes it to the racetrack. John Sheriffs has been very patient with the horse, and so it'll be interesting to see. Again, that's tomorrow at Santa Anita. Éblouissant back in action. Also tomorrow, and let's see if I can find my notes here as to where I had that, because Bob Baffert has a couple of 3-year-olds in tomorrow out at Santa Anita that are going to be worth taking a look at. Bayern and Tappet Rich both will go tomorrow out at Santa Anita in an allowance race. Baffert is saying from here they'll probably go in stakes races, but tomorrow a 1-mile allowance at Santa Anita. They're both getting some equipment changes, and both of these, Bayern and Tappet Rich, are some horses with some talent and who have had some certainly attention paid to them so far, but they're making some equipment changes. Bayern is going to take the blinkers off with the objective to ration his speed in the second time out, the first time going long. And Tappet Rich, who was so impressive early and then kind of a disappointment. Bob Baffert going to be using a new bit and going to be adding blinkers with an outside extension. So he's really kind of working the chess match a little bit equipment-wise with Tappet Rich. This horse obviously has plenty of talent, but again, subsequent to looking very good early on, has just been a little bit of a puzzle maybe. So tomorrow out at Santa Anita, a couple of 3-year-olds from the Baffert barn that will be very, very interesting to watch. Also in California news, the Pat Valenzuela saga continues. Pat Valenzuela has been banned from California racetracks. It was probably, if they go back to, I don't know if it shows the date in here, but it was back last month, sometime in January. Pat Valenzuela texted his agent that he was done with racing, and that was pretty much all that was said about it. The agent reported on the text he received and said he didn't have any more of an explanation. Valenzuela didn't specifically say, I'm retiring. He just sent a kind of a cryptic message to his agent that he was done with racing. He had been struggling at the current Santa Anita meet, really hadn't done much of anything, and if you look back at the whole of 2013, had struggled there as well. Well, given his situation, he's a guy who kind of on probation anyway, I guess you could say, and so there was a hearing with the track stewards. Valenzuela did not show up at that to discuss his absence, and he was subsequently suspended indefinitely. The terms of the suspension deny Pat Valenzuela access to the California racetrack. So again, the kind of the star-crossed legacy of Pat Valenzuela, a guy with all kinds of talent, but just all kinds of personal demons as well, it seems like, over his career, but currently banned from the California racetracks. Honor Code was scheduled to work this morning and did work this morning. Honor Code, according to the Mike Welch Twitter feed. Mike Welch, of course, covering South Florida Racing for the Daily Racing Forum, and based at Gulfstream Park. He has his partner Mike Vesey up at Palmettos, and they look at the morning workouts and do a great job there, and you can get their workout reports over on the Racing Forum website. But via Welch's Twitter feed, reported that Honor Code did get out and work this morning with 3 furlongs and 35.67, 4 furlongs 47.78, 5 and 101.49, and went out 6 furlongs and 115.53. Welch reported the horse got a little bit hot, but galloped out very well. So it looks like Honor Code is back on track. We'll see. I want to see his next race, and according to Shug McGaughey, the next race is possibly the Gotham on March 1st up at Aqueduct. But more likely, Shug McGaughey is looking at the Grade 2 $600,000 Rebel at Oaklawn on March 15th, which is going to give him a little more time. It'll be interesting to see which race they point for, because we're now, week and a half into February, and he's just kind of getting his legs under him again. That does make that Gotham Stakes come up perhaps a little bit fast. But certainly, if they made it to that race and he ran well, I think that would be a very good sign. If they wait for the Oaklawn race, that'll just be interesting. That'll say Shug McGaughey is being a little bit patient. And going to a track, boy, I would love to know how many starts McGaughey has made at Oaklawn over the years. He is mainly a New York-based guy. It seems like over the past few years, he has shifted around a little bit more, certainly. As I say, traditionally, New York most of the year, Florida in the wintertime. But you've seen him at some of the Kentucky tracks a little more than it seems earlier in his career over the past few years. So, but again, it will be interesting if they make the choice to go to Oaklawn for the Rebel on March 15th. And then, as I say, I want to see how he does in the race before saying Honor Code is all the way back. Speaking of the 3-year-old trail down at Oaklawn Park, I mentioned this just a few minutes ago. We'll have to see how the weather shakes out there, because at least for the next couple of days, the cold weather is supposed to continue. Scheduled to get back on track down at Oaklawn tomorrow, resume racing. We have Frank Miramati scheduled to join us on Racing Across America tomorrow. So if they're off and running, hopefully we can get a report from him. We'll keep our fingers crossed, because they're looking at a big weekend. They've rescheduled some stakes action that they missed last week. And then coming up on Monday, President's Day, the $300,000 Southwest. But this is notable, very notable. 4 of the prominent runners from the expected to run in Monday's Southwest shipped out so they could train. So they're really on right on top of the race. But Louise Flower, who was the winner of the Springboard Mile, who we've kind of been waiting for, that Springboard Mile past couple of years has been a little bit productive. So Louise Flower, looking forward to him. Tanzanite Cat, who won last month's Smarty Jones down at Oaklawn. Son of Dixie, a stablemate of Louise Flower, and Paganol, the very promising stablemate to Tanzanite Cat. They all shipped down to Evangeline Downs Training Center in Lafayette, Louisiana, so they could guarantee training and try to avoid some of this unseasonably cold weather that has hit Arkansas. But I find it very interesting. The trainers decided they're based at the track where their race is going to be run on Monday. They're shipping out so they can train, and then they're going to ship back. And a couple of them are saying, just kind of watching the weather, likely to come back on Friday. But again, they're taking a look at the weather to see what the situation is. But that gives you an indication of not just the weather, but maybe the track, which has been affected by this cold weather down at Oaklawn, that some of the real contenders for that Southwest on Monday have decided, in this just, again, right on the cusp of the race, to ship out and get some training done before shipping back for the Southwest. Pletcher gets a couple of his horses back on the track for some workouts, a couple of 3-year-olds with maybe some high hopes. Havana breezed in 50.50. Stablemate Hartford breezed in 101.25. Havana is preparing for the Grade 3 Swale, 7 furlongs on March 1st. Havana's looking at the Swale. Hartford is, along with Constitution, both in the same boat, looking at their next starts. They're kind of a little bit up in the air with both of those horses. So Pletcher's got what was it? Well, 40 horses that he had nominated to the Triple Crown. Some of those are horses that just obviously aren't going to make it. I think they cover all their bases with the owners, but these are a couple with some potential talent. They're on the work tab now and kind of looking out for their next starts. Again, Constitution's next start will be decided after his next work. Hartford had the work, but it's still a little bit up in the air where he's going to go next. Havana, however, to the Swale. So again, some of these 3-year-olds for Pletcher are, some of them are already on the trail, horses to watch and pull the trigger on. Some of them have just started to make their moves, and as noted, it's that time of the year where you're a little bit behind the 8 ball, but if you get a nice start in that next start up, certainly when you're coming out of the Pletcher barn, you're going to be a horse to consider. All right. Going to head to our first break. As we do, got a little video for you to watch, because certainly a name in New York racing that has been attracting a lot of attention over the past few weeks. Tyler Rice, the apprentice jockey, a niece of Linda Rice, came to New York for the winter season, has really been making some nice noise. Probably, at this point, probably the top apprentice down there as Franco moved on to the journeyman side of the game. I think she won another 3 on Monday, but again, she's been winning in bunches. She's tied in with some of the top trainers, including her aunt, Linda Rice. And I think she's somebody that certainly, if you're paying attention to New York racing, you're paying attention to, but maybe you haven't seen her like this. This is a little interview, about a minute and a half from the America's Best Racing website. Just includes an interview with Taylor Rice, so you'll get a little bit of an idea of her background and whatnot. So just about a minute and a half to introduce you to a jockey, an apprentice jockey, who's going very, very well down in New York this winter. When we come back from that, it's going to be Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com and Countdown to the Crown. Going to take a look at some of the 3-year-old action from this past weekend. All of that after this.
No, I done wrong. Left your heart torn. Is that what devils do?
It wasn't a first thought by any means. I wasn't planning on being a jockey, but I'm the only one in my generation. Both my brothers are 5'10", 5'11", and I'm the only one small enough. So I went to school, graduated, and now I needed a job. So my dad and both of my brothers, most of my family was all on the racetrack, and so I went back to the track just to work, to have a paying job. And I loved horses, and I've ridden them my whole life. And as it went on, I figured, this is what I wanted to do.
I need to know now.
First out ended, and I needed to go somewhere that I could ride a lot of races. And it just happened to work out that Manny Esquivel was coming here, and I said, you know what, I'm going to go to Chicago, get a little more experience. And I did, won 41 races there in just over 2 months, so that was amazing. I couldn't have asked that to go any better. And then they closed. So now it's, okay, go somewhere new again. And I don't know, this is the big stage. It's where everybody wants to be, so I figured I'd come take a shot at it again. The horses, they seem to improve a lot, and I hit the board. I might not win them all, but I'm getting them to the board, and it feels great. It makes the trainers happy. It's not all about winning. So, sometimes that second and third place, it means just as much, and I ride for that. I ride for every place, and you should have to do it, and it's great.
Rising from the ground, rising up to you.
I'm Mark Cassano. Join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch. We'll inform, analyze, and welcome in the biggest names in racing. So join me Saturday mornings at 10 for Down the Stretch, right here on the OTB Television Network.
Here in upstate New York, no one provides bettors with more wagering options than Capital OTB. Our network of branch and easy bet locations stretches from the mid-Hudson Valley all the way to the Canadian border and west to central New York. So whether you need to place a bet, fund your Capital Bets account, or watch the next big race, all the
is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Capital Bet TV, the fastest and easiest online wagering experience where you can monitor 5 different tracks simultaneously. 2. Capital Bet Express. Its straightforward program layout and interactive handicapping information lets you build your wager quickly and efficiently. And 3. Capital Bet Pro, designed especially for the professional horse player. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
The Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back. That's right. The 2014 Capital OTB Handicapping Challenge Series is back, and it's your chance to win thousands in cash and prizes, and a seat at the 2015 Handicapping Championship in Las Vegas. This month's contest is the Shamrock Showdown on March 1st. So sign up today, online at CapitalOTB.com, or stop in at the Clubhouse Racebook.
I'm Anthony Mormino. Join me weekdays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the day in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekdays at 9, only on the OTB TV network.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning. Wednesday morning means a visit from Jeremy Plonk, horseplayernow.com, and Countdown to the Crown. Good morning, Jeremy.
Good morning, Seth. Great to be with you.
Absolutely happy to have you on board because, again, Countdown to the Crown, it's that time of year, and we had some good stakes action over the weekend and some allowance action that I think is going to prove to be interesting for some of these 3-year-olds. I'm not sure Derby-wise, but maybe some of the other divisions, so we'll hit on some of those races as well. But let's start out with what was the highlight of the weekend as far as the 3-year-olds. That was out in Southern California, Santa Anita, the Bob Lewis. Midnight Hawk was certainly going to attract a lot of attention, and the number 3 Midnight Hawk did go off at 6-5. She too, the other Baffert entry, 9-2. You always got to like those longer halves of the uncoupled entry. And the number 1 horse, Candy Boy, Gary Stevens on board. Gary Stevens very high on Candy Boy going into and coming out of the race. And Jeremy, as we watch the stretch run here, I will note a lot of the pundits have added Candy Boy to their Derby dozens and whatnot over the past few days. But I'm looking at Countdown to the Crown from last Friday. You had Candy Boy a solid number 3 on your list. We're watching the stretch run here where Candy Boy grinds it out under the wire.
Well, he validated what I really was impressed with, that maiden win that he had back in the fall that really set him up to be a good-looking 3-year-old prospect. It was that breakout win for a John Sadler barn that really has a strong hand this winter. And Candy Boy lived up to the expectations that I had for him in the Lewis. I thought he would run a big race. He was training that way. Sadler was giving off those vibes. Stevens was giving off those vibes, and the horse ran to it. And I think you're looking at one of the better 3-year-olds in this crop. Now, obviously, you know, I had him number 3 the week before. I thought he was impressive enough that I jumped him up over Cairo Boy in my rankings that I put out for the Louisville Courier-Journal in their Sunday paper, and he'll be the number 1 horse when Countdown's released this Friday because I liked his win a little bit more than Cairo Prince because this showed an evolution, a horse who's really moving forward. Cairo Prince ran as well as we thought he was going to run, and he ran very well, so it's no knock whatsoever. But we kind of knew the goods that he was going into the Holy Bull race. Here with Candy Boy, you're looking for these 3-year-olds to progress, to jump forward, to make that leap, and he certainly did. I'm not saying he would have beat Shared Belief in the Hollywood Futurity had he had a different trip, but he would not have been beaten by the margin that he was in that race. He ran a cracker in the Hollywood Futurity, moved way too soon with a crazy move down the backstretch. They timed the move much better here. In fact, Stevens really didn't even ask for a move in this race on Saturday. That's what I liked the best, is he just kind of sat there, and it was almost motionless and urging and niggling on the horse a little bit, and they just kind of did it on their own and went by the field. And in the gallop out, I mean, he just kept going and going and going, and that's a good sign moving forward. So all in all, a very good win by the victor here, Candy Boy.
Yeah, and Midnight Hawk, you know, it's still a lightly raced horse. This is the time of year, and with horses that are this lightly raced, I always say, don't get so much caught up in the what have you done for me lately kind of situation. I still think this is a horse with some talent. Before I'd give up on him, I'd certainly look at one more race.
Oh, he's definitely a talented horse, and he's going to win some good races. But his damn Miss Wineshine was a sprinter, and I have just always thought with Midnight Hawk, I never even had him in my top 20 because I just never thought he was a May horse. He's a May horse, but not for the Kentucky Derby. He's a mile and a 16th type horse, and he's going to be that, Golden Sense Verrazano kind of horse that you're probably going to see in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile at the end of the year at Santa Anita if he progresses the way I think he will. It's a stretch now to say in January after a couple starts in February that you'll be a Breeders' Cup horse, but to me that's a more realistic goal for a runner like this. I just don't think he's going to be a quality horse going a mile and a quarter, a mile and 3/16, and certainly not at a mile and a half. Baffert's other horse in the race, though, Shitu, I didn't know what to make of him going in. I underrated him, I'll admit that, and he really impressed me. This is a big, massive horse. He's built like a sprinter. His dad's Penny Hughes, but the dam side pedigree is all route with Shitu, and that can sometimes be a great pedigree mix, that sprinter up top and stamina on the bottom. So he ran a very nice race. It was kind of reminiscent of what Painter did a couple years ago in the Derby Trail. Lightly raced, tough loss and defeat, but it really galvanized him. And I'm not saying he's going to become Painter and be a horse who hits the board in the Belmont, but this was a similar kind of race with a horse with a big upside, and he's got the body for it.
Yeah, and certainly we'll have to see where Baffert goes with some of his horses as far as the Oaklawn Trail, because he likes that as well. And speaking of Baffert, I'm sure you're going to be paying attention. I talked about it at the top of the show. He's got a couple in tomorrow at Santa Anita that will be interesting to pay attention to. Bayern, and particularly for me, Tappet Rich, and the Daily Racing Form article mentions they're going to jigger up the equipment a little bit with Tappet Rich.
Yeah, Tappet Rich has kind of been his own worst enemy. He showed a lot of talent, probably the most impressive maiden winner in California last year. I think a lot of people thought that going into the Breeders' Cup, and to the point that they threw him to the Wolves in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile off of just that maiden win. He's got a lot of talent, but things have just gone wrong for him mentally. He completely wigged out in the race at Hollywood. So we've got to see where he comes back here and where his mind's at and where the equipment adjustments may help. It's a great race to watch. I'm not sure how much money I would bet on him in that race on Thursday because he's going to be a short price and with a lot of question marks. Bayern, I thought was really impressive. Probably the best maiden winner in California, over the winter since then. So, Baffert's got two good hands to play in there. I wouldn't be surprised if either one of them won, but I think you're probably looking at something like odds on and 8-5, between the two of them. So you're not going to get much of a price either way. If you're playing a pick 4 or pick 6, I'd probably use the two of them.
All right, let's move on. Let's go back to Saturday at Gulfstream Park and look at a maiden special weight event that was a little bit interesting. Maybe, A, I think the horse that won will be interesting to watch, but B, perhaps flattered another horse that'll be worth paying attention to. Fourth race at Gulfstream was a maiden special. We'll watch the stretch run and see number 9 Tourist get it done for Bill Mott, Joel Rosario on board. 9-2 second choice. Picosa, the number 4 horse, was the even money favorite. But number 9 Tourist comes out of a fourth place finish behind Barati, who was the nice winner back on January 10th at Aqueduct for McLaughlin and Darley. And Tourist may flatter Barati a little bit. Now, as folks can see coming under the wire, this is a grass race, but Tourist, that fourth place finish behind Barati, was on the inner track at Aqueduct. And prior to that, Tourist had won a pretty good second, going a mile and an eighth on the main track at Aqueduct. So this is a horse that maybe has a bit of ability, both dirt and turf. So Tourist, I think, on his own will be interesting. But as I say, perhaps flattered Barati a little bit with the win.
Well, I agree with everything you said there. And Tourist has that surface versatility, should play well to the poly track at Keeneland if they want to do something in the middle between the dirt and the turf as well. And Mott always supports that spring meet at Keeneland very strongly. So could definitely be a horse that you're looking at potentially for the Bluegrass. The interesting thing about this race was, Tourist and Picasso, they just sprinted away from everybody else in the field and ran them off their feet, indicative of a dirt race. I mean, the second and third quarters of this race, not the first quarter, the second and third quarters both went 22.77 and 22.82. I mean, that's sprint kind of speed, and that's why they ran away from these horses, yet they still came home pretty well. So this was a race run like a dirt race, and so both of these horses, I think, could transfer their form over to the dirt a little bit, and we know Tourist already has shown that ability. So I think that is a nice look for him, and I think, he bites his now. He's a horse who's definitely going to excel as the distances go along, and it's a good look for Barati as well. Barati's now in Florida looking for some of the heavy hitters after that win in New York, And, one thing, an angle here, handicapping angle for Torres, is he was entered over at Tampa Bay Downs and was on the also eligible list and couldn't get in a couple days prior. So I like to see that when they bring a horse south like that from New York. They brought him south, and he was ready to run. They were trying to get him in a race. He couldn't get in one, so they took the next available option, and it worked out for him. So a lot of times, if you see a horse scratch trying to get in a race and then a couple days later shows up in another spot, it's usually a pretty good sign.
All right, a little bit later on the Saturday card, the 7th race, another maiden special event. And this one, as a guy, and again, if people go to horseplayernow.com or countdowntothecrown.com, every Friday you put out a great rundown of the past weekend's 3-year-old races. You look forward to 3-year-old races. You have your top 20. It's a great product, Countdown to the Crown. Well, in this past Fridays, as you looked at this past weekend, you noted race 7 at Gulfstream Park might be, and I'm quoting here, the deepest maiden special weight dirt route of the Gulfstream Park meet. And for a guy who watches the 3-year-olds as closely as you do, that is high praise for this particular race. We're going to watch the stretch run here and see if it validated your thoughts. The number 10 Ring Weekend gets it done for Graham Motion. Alan Garcia on board. They upset a little bit at 9-1. There's a fairly close finish. The favorite in here, 9-5, Bay of Plenty for McLaughlin and Darley will wind up 4th. But the top 4 are all kind of right there. But Ring Weekend, as noted, you thought this was a very deep maiden special weight field. So coming out, how do you feel about the top 4 horses?
I wish it would have come home a little bit faster. Typically, you get to the back end of these races and you want to see how they're finishing up. But after watching the gallop out of Ring Weekend, he kind of rebroke again and just drew away from everybody in the gallop out and galloped out strongly. I'm wondering if he's one of those kind of horses who kind of gawks and idles a little bit once he makes the lead. And so maybe he idled a little bit because the finish was never really in doubt, even though the margin was kind of diminishing when you see how they ran past the wire. So this was a pretty good performance. Again, this is a horse who could probably, be next up in Kentucky, something like the Bluegrass or the Spiral. I can't help believing is another really impressive horse Graham Motion has, who I think is going to be pointed towards one of those 2 races as well. So Motion could split up his troops there with Can't Help Believing and Ring Weekend and try to tackle those 2 Kentucky polytrack routes and get to the Derby that way. It worked for him with Animal Kingdom. It worked with he had another horse. I'm drawing a blank on the name. I want to say Albano, but it's not Albano. It's a horse from this year. But Adriano, I should say, was the other one that Motion took that kind of route through Kentucky and got him to Derby Day. So I think this is a possibility. He's certainly got the pedigree. He's got the connections. And, he came out of a race against Divine Oath, who I think is really good prior to that. And so, that flatters Divine Oath a little bit if you're looking at that runner moving forward. In this race on Saturday that we're talking about, we had a legend. The runner-up was a horse who just chased Vinceramos, the horse who won the Sam F. Davis over at Tampa. So there were some good, strong company lines in this. Bay of Plenty ran well. I expect him to run a little bit better than that. He flattened out in his first 2-turn race and was a little bit of a letdown. But again, first time around 2 bends, you can excuse a little bit with some of these horses. This was a very deep race. I'm not saying it was the best race we saw all year in hindsight, but it was pretty good. On paper, it sure looked good going in. So I think you're going to see some of these horses come back and run pretty well next time, because typically when a bunch of horses all hit the wire together and they don't come home that fast, it's not a race that you're overly enthralled with. So that's my only caution about this race in hindsight. But I like a lot of these horses on paper, and I want to see them again.
All right, so there were a couple of maiden races that may produce some horses that'll be fun to watch going forward. We're now going to move on and go to Parks on Saturday. Parks had a runner that certainly I think is going to be fun to watch going forward. This is an allowance event we're going to take a look at, and we're going to watch the number 6 Favorite Tale get it done in here as the 1-2 choice. Favorite Tale coming off the career debut, a nice win down at Parks in 107 and change, follows it up going the 6.5 in 115.12. And Favorite Tale, again, given what he's done in the first couple of starts, by Tail of the Cat, this is a horse that, again, maybe a little more sprint meant as the year goes forward, but certainly has been pretty convincing in the 2 Park starts so far.
Yeah, you can't do much more than open your career winning 6 furlongs at 107 and 6.5 in 115. I mean, those are fast times. And he beat a good horse here. Alex Inc., Butch Reed's horse, was one of the better horses I've seen at Parks over the course of the last several months in the 2 now 3-year-old ranks. And so this was a very good race. I think both of these horses could compete on bigger circuits and do pretty well. So this was a good race moving forward. You know, Favorite Tail gets his name for a good reason. Like you said, he's by Tail of the Cat, and his mama is a half-sister to Favorite Trick. So that's where it comes from on the Favorite Tail side of it. So there's some pedigree there to be a good middle-distance horse. Tail of the Cats do extremely well on the poly track at Keeneland. This would be a nice horse to see in something like the Lexington in a mile and a 16th. I don't think he's going to run much farther than that, and he's not Triple Crown nominated. But let's say he does something like goes to Keeneland, runs really well in the Lexington. That sets him up timing-wise nicely to be one of those new shooters we talk about at the Preakness every year. And so maybe this is a horse who kind of late in the game gets a late Triple Crown nomination and shows up as part of the Preakness field. But if not, I think you're looking at a very nice sprinter type and a horse that your folks up in your neck of the woods want to look for when it comes to King's Bishop time. He can be that good.
Yeah, that's I was thinking just that. King's Bishop certainly is going to be a race that we'll take a look for Favorite Tail to target on his schedule. Jeremy, that was last weekend's races. Certainly, again, we'll tell people to go to countdowntothecrown.com or horseplayernow.com. Pull up the Countdown to the Crown product on Friday, because I'm sure this week you'll be taking a look out at Oaklawn Southwest, which has some nice runners scheduled in that. But before we let you go, I just wanted to check. I've been asking all the guests. It was a fun weekend of stakes races out in Southern California. You had the upset of Game On Dude. In Florida, you had Lee. I'm kind of going with Lee now, I think. And the Hollywood script with Groupie Doll. What were some of your thoughts overall on the weekend?
Groupie Doll was exciting. I mean, she made you get up off the couch and stand up as she turned for home, because it was one of those races where she kind of just out of it, and you start going down the backstretch and you see a mare like that, 6, 8, 10 lengths out of it, and you say, oh boy, she just lost the will to be a runner anymore. It's the first thing that pops in your mind with an older race mare. And then all of a sudden on the turn, she got in gear, and coming down the stretch, she just laughed at anybody like me who thought at the beginning of the race that things weren't looking too good. I mean, that was a great way for her to go out, and that was really the showstopper of the day. I thought the Don Handicap was an excellent race. I mean, it was obviously fast. Lee, blitzed the track, and it was a really good effort from Will Take Charge and coming on for second, because these Oaklawn horses are at a little bit of a disadvantage right now with the lost training time, and this was an outstanding effort, even in defeat, with the travel and the road trip for Will Take Charge. Sets him up for a big year. I mean, he's going to be among the very top of the division. As for Game On Dude, I think that, the key is what's being underreported is, Jay Privman in the Forum tweeted out about a quarter crack patch that he noticed on the foot of Game On Dude right before the horses went out for the post parade, and I think that's something that hasn't been followed up on enough. A lot of people are saying the pace is what cooked Game On Dude, but if he's got foot issues, that would be a bigger concern to me, or a bigger reason for me for the defeat. Than he's been in fast paces before. You don't expect him to back up like that.
Yeah, it was certainly a little bit of a disappointment, and so we'll keep our eyes out in Southern California and Game On Dude going forward. Yeah, it was a fun weekend all the way around, and as noted, some nice 3-year-old action coming up this weekend, and folks can certainly keep up with that, again, at countdowntothecrown.com. Jeremy, as always, we appreciate the visit. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, hopefully we'll be talking about Indianapolis with a big victory in the San Vicente. Looking forward to seeing him.
There you go. Thanks again, Jeremy.
Take care.
All right, Jeremy Plonk, Countdown to the Crown and horseplayernow.com. And speaking of horseplayernow.com, right after this break, joining me in the studio also from horseplayernow.com, Brian Nadeau. We'll talk a little bit about Tampa for this afternoon, and we'll also get some of his thoughts on the weekend stakes action right after this.
The future of online betting is here, and only at the all-new CapitalOTBBet.com. CapitalOTBBet.com delivers a state-of-the-art wagering experience found nowhere else in horse racing. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
Fascinated by the world of horse racing? Interested in honing your handicapping skills? Class is in session. Night school, Monday nights. Easy to access online. It's free, interactive, and informative for the casual and serious race fan. Horse Player Now Buzz. Live horses to watch, emailed to you daily. Our eyes, your prize. Night School in the Buzz. Visit horseplayernow.com for details.
Each morning on the OTB TV network, you get the very best in horse racing programming. Weekdays begin with the Handicappers Report, where professional handicappers share their selections and analysis of the day's racing. Followed by Racing Across America, a daily conversation with racing personalities from around the country. Saturdays include Down the Stretch, where Mark Casano speaks with the biggest names in racing. And Sunday mornings, it's Loose on the Lead, where Steve Bick and I offer news and a unique lineup of weekly guests. All here on the OTB TV network.
Funding your Capital OTB bet account is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Easy Money. Clearly the fastest and easiest method of depositing funds into your account. Make deposits or withdrawals in just minutes. 2. Green Dot Money Pack. Gives you instant access to your funds. Green Dot Money Packs are available at thousands of retailers nationwide. And 3. MasterCard Visa. Simply click on the link from the funding page, enter your account information, and fund your account. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today. Missed one of our TV shows? No worries. Now you can catch all your favorite programs online. Simply log on to CapitalOTB.com and click on the YouTube link at the bottom of the homepage. And look for our new podcast coming soon. CapitalOTB.com. Log on today.
Welcome back to Racing Across America on this Wednesday morning. As noted before the break, happy to be joined now in the studio by Brian Nadeau of HorsePlayerNow.com. Good morning, Brian.
Yeah, Seth, thanks for having me back. I appreciate it.
And a little later on, we'll get some of your thoughts on the weekend stakes action, because it was certainly very entertaining. I will ask, did you watch the Fox broadcast? I thought for the inaugural episode, they did all right.
I missed it, but I talked to my buddy Jim Gluckson. He said he gave it some pretty high remarks. He thought it was a good balance of playing to the fans and then also to the hardcore bettors. So I'll have to check it out.
Yeah, Gluckson Breeders' Club.
Yeah, absolutely.
Gluckson. And have you been watching the Horse Players show?
No, that I haven't seen. I'm not a reality TV kind of guy, and I'm not in on the tournament scene either. So I haven't really given that the attention maybe I should, in the industry. But I have trouble getting into that kind of thing.
And if you're not a reality show guy, it's probably because and that's one of my complaints with it. I'm reality showed out the action, B-roll, action.
Right.
It's a very set formula that, as I say, I'm a little tired of. First episode I thought was a little promising. Second episode I wasn't too happy with. And then I haven't watched the third episode yet, which I guess got into more of the handicapping contest, which I think is going to propel them a little more. And then I should note for people, it wasn't on last night, they're taking a break during the Olympics. So it doesn't come back until another couple of weeks or so. But the first 3 episodes, if you haven't had a chance to watch it, you can pull them up on the Esquire TV Network website. If you type in Esquire Network on Google, and then you get to the front page. Up at the top, I think there's a link that says something like full episodes, and you can watch them online. That's where I've been watching.
Yeah, and I read Steve Christ's blog, and he spoke kind of highly of it. And I'm trying to get into that tournament scene. Pete Fornatale's a good friend of mine. He's doing a great job with the Forum now, writing some tournament stuff. So I think it deserves some attention. I just haven't gotten to it yet. But like you said, with the online videos, I'll probably give it a look.
Yeah, and again, if you're a guy involved in the game, it's probably worth just taking
exactly.
and getting a little feel for it. But as noted, it does have that reality show feel, which I agree completely. I'm just getting a little tired of that, but I'm testing the waters, and there have been some positive response to it. And anything the industry gets out there, and it is portraying bettors in a little bit better light than you typically
normally
see.
Yeah, people think of the horse
player.
They're
actually intelligent people,
right,
so that's a positive.
We're not all broke and having trouble paying our rent this month at least.
And we'll see if we can help that out a little bit as. We're going to take a look at a couple of races from Tampa this afternoon. Certainly, again, the weather at Tampa much better than we're seeing here in upstate New York. So we'll live vicariously with the Tampa and Gulfstream races on this Wednesday afternoon. But you got a couple of thoughts. Kick things off in the 4th today. A maiden claimer, 10 to 12,500 tags, 4-year-olds and up. They're going to go 7 furlongs. What were your thoughts here?
Yeah, I came up with number 1, Shogun Rua here. And, the first time out, this horse broke slowly from an inside draw over a sloppy track, but if you note, took a ton of money that day, went off at 3-1, so it was well meant in an 8-horse field as well, and a couple of the horses that beat him that day come back, so I'm going to give him another shot based on the tote money. Comes back with blinkers today as well, so, and doesn't take a drop in class, which I like too. Now the rail's not a great bargain, but his price should be right, and like I said, he seemed pretty well meant that first time out, and when a horse catches slop like that, you can easily forgive it. He showed a little speed too after the slow break. So with the blinkers on, I think with an alert beginning, he could just maybe break running and prove tough to catch here at a nice price.
Right, and second-time starter, there's a coupled entry that's a first-time starter, both owned by Bruno Schickendance. So we'll see what happens with Shogun Rua in the 4th. In the 9th this afternoon, that was a conditional claimer, 25,000 tags, non-winners of 2 lifetime, the condition, 4-year-olds and up. This time they're scheduled on the grass at 1 1/16 miles.
Yeah, I'm going to go all the way to the outside here. Southside Johnny. It's kind of an angle, Seth. I know you like to talk about a lot, that light bulb angle sometimes. This is a horse last time, had threatened a little bit, finally broke through last time when he added blinkers as well. So I think you get a little double whammy there. Horse should be a big number. I didn't really see a lot in this field. The post isn't great. It isn't ideal for this trip here, but he should be able to maybe tuck in a little bit with a long run into that first turn. Going to provide a ton of value. And, you know, sometimes when horses add blinkers, you don't have to even necessarily look at all the other races if they really show a vast improvement in their form. So at a big price against a pretty modest field, I'm going to give him a look here. At you know, should be 12-15 to 1 in a wide open race.
And that really does have a light bulb moment, a look about it, in that this horse moved from the Wesley Ward barn into the barn of Dennis Ward, and it seems like over the course of 3 races, they were just figuring this horse out and then came through last time.
Yeah, exactly. And like, you know, last time he finally showed some stretch stamina, some stretch desire, so I think the blinkers probably added a little more focus to this horse as well. And again, sometimes when these Lifetime maidens win, they do tend to win right back because the public overlooks it. They almost think it's a little bit of a fluke, so they kind of dismiss them readily. And on paper, this horse really isn't that far out of it. And again, there's really not much in here, so let's give him a look at, you know, at least double digits, I would think. I wouldn't want anything less than 10s on this horse.
And also, it's worth noting, I'm certainly older than you, so it certainly goes for me, probably the beginning of your career too. But going from a maiden race to these N2Ls is totally different. When I started in the game, there weren't the non-winners at 2.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
That was a much tougher move from maidens into bona fide winners.
Sure.
Maidens into these limited winners, it's just not as potent a move.
Yeah, we're seeing it a lot at Aqueduct now. Every now and again, they'll write a 1X, and you might see a 6 or a 7-time winner in there. And like you said, it's so much more difficult because now in this field here, you got a bunch of 1-fers. You'll see horses 1 for 25. 1 for 22. I call them refusers because they just don't want to win. You know what I mean? Usually anything over 1 for 15 for me, I don't care how fast or good you look on paper, I'm not that interested. And you see a lot of these horses 1 for 17 with 8 slices underneath. You know, and like you said, it's a lot easier, this 2L, than these 1Xs. So I think that bodes well for this horse as well.
And I, on the Handicappers Report yesterday, I did Turf Paradise in the condition. And I said, as I handicapped the race, I said, and sure enough, it played out that way. None of my selections.
Yeah,
but the first race yesterday was horses who have raced at Turf Paradise in the 2002-14 season, but haven't finished first, second, or third. Yeah, you looked down.
In these smaller tracks in this day and age, where they're struggling to get horses to the entry box, they've got to come up with some kooky stuff just to get them in there, and that kind of sounds like it fits the bill right there.
It's just like the loser's condition.
Yeah, exactly.
It was tough to come up with something. And before we go to the break, let me just ask you, speaking of smaller tracks and whatnot, we took a look at Tampa. Wintertime, what do you? I probably play more in the wintertime. Summer, obviously it's Saratoga I play quite a bit, but in the wintertime I probably play more than the rest of the year. I love the wintertime tracks. I love Oaklawn. I think there's a lot of value there. Typically, I like the turf down at Fairgrounds. That's been tough this year. Heck, Oaklawn over the past week has been very tough. They haven't run. But I also like Tampa. I think they're really interesting. One of the things I like at all of these tracks, they've got the 50-cent pick 3 over the past couple of years, which is a bet I've kind of moved towards, again, over the past couple of seasons. Where do you focus in the winter?
Well, I mean, when it's 7 degrees outside every day, you don't really want to go out too much, so I totally hear you there. I'm a Gulfstream guy. I do love the Oaklawn product, though. I think they have the best 3-year-old product from start to finish in their meat. In the country. I love what they've done, and they spice it up with having some of these stakes on Monday too. Yeah. I know you mentioned to Jeremy about the Southwest next Monday, so I think it's great. But I'm true to Aqueduct as well, and I think what they did this winter, going to the Monday, I think it's a no-brainer to me because there's just not a lot out there on Monday. You got Parks, I guess, and the Turf Paradise that you mentioned. Yeah. But I think that's a great idea. So I'll probably pretty much those 3. I've got Oaklawn, Gulfstream, and then Aqueduct as well.
Yeah, and again, it goes without saying, because I pay so much attention to the New York product the rest of the year, I certainly look at Aqueduct too. But Oaklawn, there's so much value there for some reason. So for some reason, the bettors just don't seem to be as keyed in maybe as some other racetracks. So you can get some stuff that sneaks in under the radar that I think at some of the bigger circuits wouldn't happen.
And I think you brought up a great point too now with the 50-cent base wagers that are pretty much across the board now. It gives the little guy or the small-time player a chance at a big score without having to go overly deep. We've seen it in the trifectas, and now we're seeing it in the pick threes as well. And it gives a lot more comfortability, I think, if you're not playing with a huge bankroll and you're not, playing boxcar tickets across the board. You can play for 50 cents and have a great shot at a score and not have to go too deep into your pocket as well.
Yeah, all you got to have in one of those maiden races is a first-time starter that floats completely under the radar, and then you can kind of go deep on either side, which for $1 becomes a little bit expensive, but for 50 cents, even a pick three can pay pretty well from 50 cents.
Yeah, I don't think people realize, maybe if they're new to the game or they're not too savvy about the horizontal exotics. I always say it just takes one price in those. It doesn't even matter if you have, even if you have two favorites win, if you can get a 12-1 in there, a horse that maybe people just don't see on paper, it only takes one price. Even in this day and age of the 50-cent increment, you really only need one price in there to really spice up.
Particularly if you're beating a 6-5.
Well, that's the other thing too. Yeah, I would say, if we're getting into that discussion briefly, maybe you don't want to start a sequence off with a 6-5 or end it, because anyone on a budget is going to single that horse. But if you can beat that horse in that first or last leg, then you really have something, because I think anybody on a budget is just going to take the easy way out and just hope it's a free square and move on.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, we'll take our last break. When we come back, have a quick look at some of the stakes action from the past weekend, get some of Brian's opinions on that. Stay tuned. Racing Across America will continue.
I'm Jeff Carl. Join me Saturdays and Sundays at 9 for the Handicappers Report. We'll handicap the top tracks across the country and help you prepare for the weekend in racing. That's the Handicappers Report, weekends at 9, only here on the OTB TV network.
I got it. Watch me. I got it. Hey! I got something that makes me want to shout. I got something that tells me what it's all about. I got a move that tells me what to do. If you don't, brothers and sisters, then you won't know what it's all about.
Hey, race fans, head down to the all-new Clubhouse Racebook and get in the game. With live horse racing on more than 250 flat-screen TVs, state-of-the-art wagering terminals, fantastic food and drinks, an amazing Vegas-style atmosphere with seating for nearly 900 of your closest friends. Conveniently located at 711 Central Avenue, right off Exit 5 of I-90 in Albany, the Clubhouse Racebook is the better choice.
Using CapitalOTBBet.com is as easy as 1, 2, 3. 1. Simply log on with your username and password from the homepage. 2. Fund your Capital OTB account through our Easy Money, Green Dot, or Visa MasterCard options. And 3. Place your bet on one of our 3 easy-to-navigate wagering platforms, Capital Bet TV, Capital Bet Express, or Capital Bet Pro. CapitalOTBBet.com. Log on today.
This is Steve Beck. Join me Tuesday through Saturday here on OTB TV for At the Races, my Sirius XM daily news magazine of the thoroughbred industry. Handicapping, interviews, analysis, everything you could want. 6 a.m. OTB TV.
Welcome back to Racing Across America. Seth Merrill joined this morning by Brian Nadeau of HorsePlayerNow.com. And Brian, as noted before the break, let's get some of your opinions on what was a really nice weekend of stakes action across the country. First up, we're going to once again watch the stretch run to the San Antonio because obviously the story there was Game On Dude at 30 cents to the dollar, wind up finishing a disappointing fifth, triggers some nice big show payoffs in there. Blingo, however, for John Sheriff's and the Zenyatta team, Jerry Moss and company, gets it done at 15-1. Game On Dude, however, we're watching the stretch run. Game On Dude really engaged in a pace battle up front with Blue Skies and Rainbows. They both wind up fading, but still, got to give you credit here to Blingo, who gets it done. Also Imperative, who held on very well at 26-1 under Kent DeSormo. I've been saying for a few days now, when are we going to hear the word that Kent DeSormo is moving back to California? That's a couple of nice weekends out there for him now.
Yeah, well, when's the last time we said that, by the way, as well? So, yeah, good for Kent. You know, he kind of resurrected his career a little bit last summer at Arlington, so maybe he's, getting back into the good graces of the horsemen, because we know.
Oh, absolutely.
Living in Saratoga, we know that wasn't
Marty McGee won the Eclipse for that whole story, and
sure.
if folks haven't read it, go back to the Racing Forum and pull it up. He deserved the Eclipse. It was a great story.
Yeah, no doubt. But, getting back to the race, me personally, I think this is a big red flag for Game On Dude. I mean, I know Jeremy was on, he mentioned the quarter crack. You know, Baffert said it was nothing. So if we want to take that at face value, this is a horse that would just wallop these horses on his day. Now, I always kind of thought he was a fraud, but a fraud in the Breeders' Cup. Out west, you know, with the clubhouse rides and those kind of horses, he would throttle those horses nonstop. So I think this is a big deal, and he's chased fast paces before. I think this is a big deal. So it'll be interesting to see, does he come back in the big cap? Where does he land? Because for him to run that poorly, I know it was a hot pace and all, but for him to run that poorly, I think that's a little bit of an issue.
Yeah, it certainly raises some question marks. And it's one of those situations where you do want to see the next race. I always give him one before I give up. And so if he strings a couple of together that are disappointing, then then we'll have a little bit of a better barometer on Game On Dude. But again, this does raise some red flags. Now let's pull up the Bob Lewis, also from Saturday. That was the 3-year-old race, and I just wanted to show the stretch run of this one once again because we watched it earlier with Jeremy Plonk. Jeremy says he's pumping Candy Boy up to #1 on his list this week. You, as you stepped into the studio, however, you noted that you had maybe some question marks about Candy Boy. We're going to watch him come down here under the line. It will be Candy Boy over Baffert's duo of She-Two and Midnight Hawk. But as noted, you may have some question marks on Candy Boy.
Yeah, I have a lot of question marks. But, yeah, Candy Boy, I don't know. I watched this race a few times, and I just didn't see anything that wowed me. I thought, you know, the horse that ran second for Baffert, he had never run past 6.5 furlongs, I believe. He did all the dirty work in there. Candy Boy set a perfect trip, stalking, you know, just off the pace. And, you know, I guess he wasn't asked for his best, but I didn't necessarily think he had all that much more to give in there. And I kind of thought watching the race, I said to myself, he had to win this race. And he did, so give him credit for that. And he seems to be progressing. But I didn't see the wow move that I saw in the cash call when he just blew the field open, you know, and too early, obviously. But when he blew the field open and then regressed behind Shared Belief, I just thought this was much more workmanlike. So I need to see more out of him in his next start because I don't know what he beat in here. Midnight Hawk, I think, got exposed a little bit. He beat 3 horses in the Sham, none of which I don't necessarily know where they're going. You know, Christo is an okay horse, but I don't think he's at the top of a lot of people's lists. So I think the next start for me for Candy Boy, be it in the San Rafael or the Santa Anita Derby, I should say, I think we need to see more before we put him on that top tier right now.
All right. And again, you work for horseplayernow.com.
I know.
So
I just
in the company meeting.
Yeah.
You can duke it out a little bit.
The phone call will be a little longer next week, I think.
Before we go, do you want to get some of your thoughts on maybe some of the other action? Been getting all the guests' opinions this week because again, it was a nice weekend, and Lee and certainly Groupie Doll also added to the excitement this weekend. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I sent a buddy a text after watching Groupie Doll, and I said, I don't understand how you can retire that horse after this because she's by nothing, out of nothing. The Breeders' Cup is again at Santa Anita. My goodness, she looks better than ever. Her run Saturday, she was left for dead at the start. You don't win races like that at Gulfstream. And she just throttled the field. So I think they paid 3-2 for her.
3-1.
3-1, thank you. So if she has another good campaign like it looks like she would have, I mean, she's going to earn about one or half of that, if not more, back. But I guess she's, you know, bred to Giants Causeway, and down the road she goes. But I thought it was awesome to see her go out as she did. And then the Don, I don't think you certainly can't take anything away from Lee. You know, track record, but I thought Will Take Charge really acquitted himself nicely, spotting recency, spotting a race over the track, and horses just don't win with his style at Gulfstream going long.
Particularly the way that played out. Absolutely. Lee makes the big move at the top of the stretch. In this meet, it seems tough to make up ground in the stretch, so he was up against it. I thought Will Take Charge, given, you know, training over at Oaklawn where they've had the weather issues, ships in the week of the race on a van ride. So he had some knocks against him already. So a nice second. I thought he's certainly, as you say, acquitted himself and validated what we saw at the end of last year. And Lee, I picked the horse because I thought that last race at Gulfstream was good. But now I'm saying I want to see this horse win away from Gulfstream. Because a lot of horses